Hello, everyone. This is Margaret Manning with 60 and Me. This is the place where women over 60 come to be inspired. And, as we get a little older, we start to think about the priorities in our life around independence and financial security and health. And, as a generation, the boomer generation is sort of a sandwich generation. We're in between looking after our own families and our children and then looking after perhaps aging parents. And we take on this role of caregiver. And, it sometimes can be a challenging situation. So my guest today is Dr. Dale Atkins. Dr. Dale is a relationship expert. She is a psychologist who has a specialty in family psychology and in positive aging, and also how to balance this life, a stressed life balance that we go through. So, Dr. Dale, welcome.
Thank you, Margaret. It's lovely to be with you and your group of women all over the world.
Thank you so much for being here. We actually do have a lot of questions on this topic of caregiving and this the role that a lot of women in our 60s play, looking after our own families, grandchildren perhaps, and then also aging parents. So I did reach out to the community and I asked them some questions about their challenges with caregiving. And I wanted to just ask you some of those questions and get your insights. And I do know that you actually, this is a topic that you've done a lot of research and work on. So please include, the resources, when you're giving your replies, because this is not a one-time thing. This goes on for years. So support along the way is good. So I'll start with a question that someone raised, which I think really encapsulates the issue, which is, between a stressful job, trying to maintain a home, finances, and visiting my mom at the nursing home every day, how does a caregiver find balance?
It's a wonderful question. And I think the first thing that this caregiver needs to hear is kudos to you. And one of the things that caregivers rarely hear are expressions of appreciation.
Yes.
Often from the people who they're caring for.
Yes.
So one of the things we must always do and not lose sight of is, and I believe is the essence of this woman's question, is how can we take care of ourselves and take care of others?
Yes.
In the introduction, you talked about the sandwich generation, and we certainly are that. I often refer to it as the club sandwich generation because, in fact, we are often taken care of in some way. Our parents, our children, and our grandchildren.
Yes.
And whether it's financial, whether it's emotional, whether it's time in, time out, we are really there. And the problem is that we are juggling so many balls. Many of us are still working, feeling good, working into our later years.
Yes.
And when do you take care of yourself? So with the analogy about the ball juggling, I like to ask people to focus on what they are doing, the balls that are still in the air rather than the balls that drop. Because so many of us, particularly women, we really do focus on the balls that have dropped. And we chastise ourselves for not doing more, rather than commending ourselves and recognizing what we are doing. And so when we are doing whatever we're doing, we have to stay present. And we have to be in the moment with that person or with that occupation or with that drive between work and seeing our mother. And what can we do to stay present at that time? Because if, let's say, we're taking care of our parent and we're sitting with them at the nursing facility, but we're thinking about what we're going to make for dinner, or are we going to get out on time to pick up our kids, or whatever it is, we are not present. So the quality of what we're engaged in is diminished, and that diminishes our experience. It also diminishes the energy, changes the energy between us and the person we're with. So if I can ask everybody to, when they're doing whatever they're doing, be where they are.
Yes.
And
be present.
Yes. And in the transition times, use the transition times to, in part, take care of yourself, which is think about the other things you need to do. Or if you're in the car, listen to something that is very soothing, inspiring, energizing, whatever your favorite music is. Music does enormously wonderful things for the soul, for the stress level, reducing the stress level. If you want to hear some intellectual conversation and you don't think you're having enough intellect in your life, then turn on, some wonderful talk radio that you really enjoy. Not the ones where everybody's screaming at each other, but something where you can really learn something. Because what happens often is people feel they get in different ruts and they feel that their life is getting smaller rather than expanding. So taking care of yourself can take many forms.
So that's actually really great advice, that that you take time for yourself, doing something that resonates with you, whether it's music that you love, or just having a cup of coffee in your favorite cafe, just something between roles that kind of delineates, that was my role with my mom, this is my role with my family, and so on.
Exactly. Yeah. Because what happens is we wear so many hats and we try to put all the hats on at the same time. Exactly. I'm reminded of that wonderful children's book where I don't remember the title, I'm sorry, but the graphic is the gentleman has all these hats on his head. Like
the cat in the hat.
And some of the cat in the hat. And what's so interesting is then a big wind comes and blows all the hats away. So what happens is we don't want our life to be that big wind. No. We don't want to have all these hats blowing all over the place. We want to be able to have that hat fit for that moment. And I think what's important, as I mentioned before, is appreciation for yourself, forgiveness, that you're not able to do all these things, and focus on what you are able to do. Mm-hmm. I find that writing, for many people, is a wonderful way to express some of the frustration, but also some of the joys. And we hear so much today about being able to write about gratitude. The first thing in the morning or the last thing at night, to just keep something next to your bed that allows you to write 3 things that you're grateful for from this day. Or it could be 3 things you learned about yourself from this day. Mm-hmm. 3 things that you anticipate. Because so many of us make lists and then we don't get the list done. And the first thing we do and the last thing we do before we go to sleep and when we get up is all these things that are on my shoulders, rather than being able to look at doing what we can do, focusing on what we can focus on. In my book, Sanity Savers, I talked about 5 sanity savers. And they all begin with S, and they're really simple.
Okay.
One has to do with taking care of yourself. One has to do with support of others. You don't go to people who can't support you for support, because that just adds to your stress. Surroundings, that at some point you try to have your surroundings be as peaceful for you or as energized, whatever it is for you that you need, and that there's a place that you can go to, hopefully in nature, where you can breathe in that which is larger than you, because so often we feel that we're alone, we're stuck, we're isolated in our role. And the 4th S is stimulation, to always keep your mind active, engage in something that you're really passionate about. And then the 5th, and probably the most important, is to savor, and to savor where you are, what you have, what you've done, what you've learned, to take that proverbial deep breath and be able to just quiet yourself, to quiet your body, to quiet your mind. Many women who do a lot, who doesn't, but particularly this woman who wrote the letter about working, her family, taking care of her mom every day, all of those things. What we do is we often ignore our bodies. We might have a pain here or a headache. We don't pay attention to it. And those are wonderful signals that we need to pay attention, that we need to stop, that we need to take a breath, that when we're driving, we're not on the phone, which, by the way, is really not a good thing to do, because you can't focus on driving and talking on the phone equally well, even if you're hands-free.
I know. Warning her.
So instead of thinking about the phone, think about breathing at the light. If you have music on,
yes, it's very good.
Getting into that moment and allowing your body to relax.
Getting into rhythms. It's really amazing to me when I read the comments from the community about how giving most of the women are. And when I read the comments about looking after an aging parent, particularly, they are filled with love for it. There's something about women in general, I think, but, this age particularly, where we do want to be giving and kind, but we forget sometimes, like you've reminded us, to be kind to ourselves. And, and that goes to another question that someone asked, which was, in a situation where a parent, for example, is ill for some time, you've got this routine of which is very tiring, to go and see them. And Often their mind may be affected, and you're experiencing negativity all the time because not even they're not even conscious of it sometimes. But then the question was, how do you keep yourself positive? And maybe it's the same answer, but what other tips can you give us for turning a conversation around? Like, how are you doing today, Mom? Not very well. How do you turn that around?
I think that it's a wonderful question, and I think what you do is first of all, you do something good for yourself before you walk in. So maybe you walk in with a cup of aromatic tea that is relaxing.
Chocolate.
Pardon?
Chocolate.
Dark chocolate. Absolutely. And maybe you bring one for
Brace yourself.
Exactly. And plan to do something when you leave also that's going to be fun. Maybe as you're walking out, you call your best friend and you just vent for a minute, but then she tells you a joke.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm big on bookends. And so, because you have to prepare yourself, because if you don't have bookends, what happens?
Yeah, that's
Books
great.
fall apart and they fall down and they get all over the place. So you've got to keep them tight. But specifically to your question, when someone says, how you doing? And the person says, oh, it's terrible. They go through this litany of complaints. I think what we do is often the wrong thing. We say, oh, you're always complaining. Oh my God, I can't stand it. No, it really must be tough going through what you're going through. And I really feel that you're having a hard time. You know what I was thinking of? I was thinking of when we took that trip, when we went to the mountains.
Yes.
And so you segue, you cut, you segue, and you bring that person with you, and you try to say something that's positive, but you can't do it if you don't feel it. If you get drawn down into that deep pit, you're going to be sloughing around down there with the person, and then you both have to climb out. So that's not a good thing. But if you say, I was looking through some pictures. I believe that nobody should ever go to visit anybody who they're taking care of without pictures. And even if the person has dementia, because then it's the first time they're seeing the picture each time.
Yes.
And you say, this is what I remember. And let the person, if they can, share their memory. Now, they may have a negative memory. They may say, oh, it was terrible. It rained the whole time. It was awful. I fought with your father. Whatever they say, that's what you remember. You know what I remember? Yes. And then you can make up a memory. I feel I'm a big proponent of lying to get the train back on track. And so
I was going to ask you that question. I think that's a good answer, though. Little white lies.
White lies that can help a person move from a place of darkness to a place of light. But the question remains, how do you take care of yourself? So you bring with you what you feel would be comforting for you.
Yes.
And so I never go anywhere without a chamomile tea bag. I never go anywhere without pictures of my grandchildren. I never go anywhere, well, I try never go anywhere without my dog, but that's a little tough. And I think that you bring, again, we're back to objects and things that mean something to us, but you bring what you feel will be good for you. I also feel that when you're 60 and over, you're much freer. So you can sing. When my dad had Alzheimer's, Margaret, I sang all of his favorite songs, most of which he remembered. Yes. He didn't remember anything else, but he remembered his songs. Our visits were so uplifting and so wonderful because we laughed and we sang. Yeah, and we did that. So go out of the box. I ask people to go down the rabbit hole when they have to be with people who are difficult for them. Go down there, find out what they need, and come back up as if you're playing with a child, as if you're going to be engaging with a puppy, because that's the part of you that will connect. And that's the part of you need to connect with yourself to feel better. Read a poem. If you don't have time to read a book, get a book of short stories. Get a book of inspirational readings. Read one every night before you go to bed. When you're waiting in a doctor's office, bring something that's going to be enlightening and inspiring rather than answering all your emails. One of the things that I find distracting for so many people is the pinging of their mobile devices going all the time, which doesn't let them relax. In a place of quiet.
Well, I think they should buy your book, Sanity Savers, because it sounds like there was plenty of great advice in there, and I need to remember to take a look at that. Related to that question about looking after a parent, and by the way, I wanted to you made me think, as you were talking about nostalgia, And this is something that's really been coming out in research a lot lately. And there's a fabulous movie just been released called Alive Inside. And it's based on, do you remember that YouTube of the gentleman an old gentleman who was very comatose, and then they played him Cab Calloway songs, and he suddenly came back to life. And they're finding this is a really, music, like you said, is a really great way to, redirect the energy.
But part of the brain where we live, where we remember music, where we hear music, where we process music, is the part of the brain that stays quite alive for a very, very long time. So everyone, whether you have dementia or not, should be having the music they love. And it really helps with our memories and learning new things. Also, when you care for someone, you feel as if there's this routine, and it can be very difficult, and you feel the sameness. So really what I suggest to people is that they try to learn something new every day. That if you're reading about the news, learn something new about the country that you never knew. If you're reading about a person that's interesting to you, just Google them and find an interesting fact.
Yes.
There are so many things that we can do. I mentioned mobile devices before. You can learn a language on your mobile device. Keeps your brain going. It keeps you interested in something new, and it gets you energized, because what you want to do is replace and replenish and refurbish yourself. And again, the best way to do that also is through laughter.
Thank you so much for that advice. I mean, I think that we started this conversation talking about caregiving, and you kept the thread all the way through, which is, whether you're looking after a grandchild or your own, as maybe a disabled child of your own, or you're looking after a parent, you've still got to put yourself first, and you've got to keep that wonderful bohemian, eclectic spirit that makes women in their 60s today so vital. We can do this. We can use our imagination and use our carefree love of life to stimulate, to give us the energy, like you said, to get through these things. Thank you so much. We all have it. Yeah, sorry?
We all have it in ourselves.
Well, we do.
We just have to discover it again if it's been dormant for a while.
Okay, this has been fantastic advice. Thank you so much for your insights, Dr. Dale. So before we finish, is there anything that you'd like to say, any advice for people dealing with this situation, any context you'd like to give?
Thank you, Margaret. I really do. When we talk, when we talk about the 5 S's in particular, I really want to talk about the importance of physical exercise and nutrition, and just really taking time for yourself, because it's so important that we take care of our physical body so that we really have the strength, both physical and emotional, to care for others.
Yes, that's excellent advice, and that actually is something that I always forget. And it applies whether you're looking after yourself, even if you've got no one else in the world to take care of but you. Just exercise and nutrition. Thank you so much for that reminder. Well, it's been great talking with you, and look forward to speaking with you again. Thanks so much.